I'm very happy to have Brad Johnson back on the show. He has been working with different extraterrestrials since 2008 when he began his sessions with Adronis. And also, he has been in communication with an inner Earth being called Athena. And recently, he had a really remarkable update with Athena that shared a lot of very important information about what's coming in the next 2 years. So I thought it'd be great to have Brad come back on the show and share with us what he was told with Athena. So welcome, Brad, back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Good to be back here.
Yes, well, I was very, let's say, enthralled with the information from Athena because, to me, it always made more sense that humanity's evolution into a higher state of consciousness, 5D, whatever you want to call it, was going to be something that was going to be assisted uh, by inner earthers as well as extraterrestrials. And if anything, that the inner earthers know more about our history and they're more connected to us. And so I think they would naturally play a big role. So, yeah, why don't you just kind of like share what you know about Athena and the inner earthers? I know Athena is kind of like let's just say, more enthusiastic than her brother and others about helping humanity. So why don't you kind of walk us through all of that?
Yeah, I mean, this was actually just a little over a week ago from the time of this recording. And so every once in a while, I connect with Athena of the Delphi. So again, the Delphi represents an intra-terrestrial, we could call them, intra-terrestrial civilization that resides under Greece. And they refer to themselves as the Delphi. You could also call them the Delphi. There's different names for them. Originally, when I made a contact with them, it was back in 2017, and I connected to Athena's older brother, known as, he just referred to himself as Nefertitus. Now, they don't really have names. These are just names that they have provided, and it often has a lot of connections to our ancient past as well, too. Nefertitus and, of course, Athena. But he was not really enthralled. He wasn't too excited about being a particular ambassador. And so I worked with him for a little bit, but I could tell that he just wasn't comfortable talking to humans. So he suggested that his sister take over. And so his younger sister, who is Athena, who I've been talking to for quite a few years as well, too, off and on, has been providing some really interesting information. So the information that we got just from the recent broadcast I did last week was that Athena was saying that there are new messengers coming into the play right now. That there have been, again, quite a few different whistleblowers over the many decades, and they have done somewhat of an efficient job. But what happens with a lot of these quote unquote whistleblowers is they kind of lose sight of the importance of the mission that they're trying to do, because a lot of them want to have families. A lot of them want to try and have a living. They want to try and make money. They may spend a lot of time in the public eye, but really, with a lot of the beings that provide this information to these whistleblowers, it's not for the intention of them trying to have a cozy life while also trying to provide this information. So a lot of human beings don't really want to do this in that way. And this is what Athena was saying, is that there's going to be messengers that are much more intra-terrestrial, that are actually going to be taking over the whistleblowing agenda. Now, they are not here for fame. They are not here for popularity. They're not here to write a book. They're not here to do any of that stuff. They are here to be direct messengers. And from what she was saying is that they are going to be talking to a lot of the world leaders and letting them know there's going to be a major cleanup taking place on the planet starting this year, 2026, and especially over the next 3 to 4 years. We're going to be seeing a major cleanup of everything. And they basically say, you need to get your act together. You need to start playing along with where we're going here. Because if you don't, everything in regards to what you've received is going to fall away, right? You're not going to have your position of power. You're not going to have your authority, probably within the next couple of years here, could be even sooner. So really what's happening right now is a major cleanup, you could say a major cleanup campaign that is taking place, that is actually working with a much larger group. And this larger group is both intraterrestrial and extraterrestrial together. So I've talked about human guardians on the moon going back several years. And of course, I've also talked about some of the beings here in the inner Earth. A lot of the old agendas came from a Nordic group that basically was responsible for the Nazi movement. Okay, the Nazi movement was not just Hitler's idea; he was a proxy. A lot of this came from Nordics, right? So these Nordic beings, in that sense, that are also intraterrestrial, were the ones that basically had the same philosophy as a Nazi in that sense, believing that they were the perfect race and that they had the pure blood and all of that, right? That's an intraterrestrial philosophy that Hitler basically adopted, right? So really what we're seeing here is that a lot of the wars that have been waged upon the planet, the bankers themselves are not the full culprits behind this. They were the proxies. A lot of this actually came from intraterrestrial affairs. A lot of the flying saucer craft that the Nazis got actually came from them. Came from a lot of these intraterrestrials, not extraterrestrials. A lot of people thought it came from the Greys. Did not come from the Greys. It came from these particular Nordic intraterrestrials. So they are still around, but like I said, they're kind of purists and they don't really talk to even some of their own intraterrestrial civilizations underneath the earth. They are very selective about who they talk to, but they are much more of a smaller group, and they're basically dwindling in regards to the nature of allies. There's a much more larger allying force, both intraterrestrial and extraterrestrial, as well as what I've referred to as the counter forces. And this counter force is just so powerful and so much larger that it really cannot be contested against a lot of these other cabals. So these cabals, in that sense, are struggling. And these messengers are letting them know, hey, we have an opportunity where you could have amnesty if you start following our agenda, if you start playing along with what we're going to be doing here. And a lot of that is going to be launching new forms of medical technology, energy technology. So we're looking at new technology that's coming in. I'm not promising medical beds here, but I'm promising that there are very strong technologies that can really help out with this. It really is going to be leading to an era of healing. And I'd say probably post 2028, 2029, we're going to start seeing a lot more healing coming upon the planet than all of the shenanigans that we're going through right now.
Now, I mean, there's a lot of kind of nuances in what you've just said, and a lot of information that we probably want to unpack. And I'm sure a lot of people are very interested in the different factions that you described in the inner earth, that it's not just one smooth, harmonious kind of like civilization down there. There are multiple civilizations. Some of them, as you said, kind of had this Nazi-like ideology, and they look like these. They look like Nordics. Others have, I guess, a more kind of humane ideology, and I guess Athena would be one of those that look upon humans as, well. How would they look upon us as kind of like uneducated barbarians that just need a little bit of help to, share the earth in a responsible way? Because I guess we're on the surface, we're the custodians of the surface, but we have all this incredible technology. So do they see us as barbarians that kind of need a little bit of love and attention, and the best will come out of us?
Well, the good news is that the majority of the intraterrestrial civilizations wants humanity to evolve. Okay, so that's the good thing, right? If they did not, then they wouldn't want to have anything to do with us, and we'd probably be in a very different type of situation right now. But that's not it. Not just intraterrestrials, but also extraterrestrials as well too. There are many different extraterrestrial groups that want to see humanity evolve. But as I've talked about, even in my broadcasts, is that they're really mainly here for the Earth, and we're kind of along for the ride, right? So they want the earth to thrive. They want the earth to do well. And together with the earth, humankind will follow, right? So it's kind of like they see humanity as the followers of the earth rather than saying that, well, their priority is on us. I'm sorry, guys, but it's not. It's never been that way, right? When you look at a lot of these intraterrestrial civilizations, and they're millions of years old, you have millions of years of evolution. And I'm not talking about them being like cavemen or cavewomen or Neanderthals or anything like that. These are people that have had an incredible amount of intelligence and know-how and spiritual evolution that goes back millions of years, way, way longer than any of us here as human beings. So they're very advanced and they're very evolved. So it's not about thinking that they are childlike themselves, because a childlike race that only wants to see destruction is not going to be put into those particular types of positions in the grander scheme of things. Now, that also goes with extraterrestrials as well, too. Yes, there have been some regressive groups, but those regressive groups really can't do anything. when you're looking at regressive groups, even relating to intraterrestrials and to extraterrestrials, they can't really do anything because their agendas are different, right? All they can do is they can influence, right? It's like having that whisper in your ear. And certain humans were very susceptible to having that particular type of whisper in their ear. Kings and queens and emperors and oligarchs, all in the ancient past, were basically bribed based upon the idea of money and power and knowledge, right? And that was being utilized as a means, as a crutch to help these particular groups get what they needed out of the resources of the planet. Now, basically, when we look at Earth, some people may look at Anunnaki legends and so forth, where we see beings from Nibiru coming here and being able to mine the earth through slaves. That's true. That has actually happened. Earth has been mined over a very, very long time, and a lot of the minerals that have been here have been so precious. There are minerals that were here that aren't even here anymore. We've had minerals that basically grew within what we would call silicon trees, world trees, trees that basically went all the way up the top of the sky. If you look at Table Mountain in South Africa, if you look at Devil's Tower, I believe it's in Ohio. Even if you're looking at Mount Fuji has that kind of low plane with its mountain as well too. Anything that you find pertaining to a mountain that looks like it has a flat top, that would indicate a root point to a silicon tree or to a world tree. And there were all kinds of minerals under those trees at the time. It's kind of like the movie Avatar, the very first one, where they blow down the tree, they knock the tree down, and there's all these minerals that they're going after. That's a very true enactment in regards to what's happened to our planet over 100,000 years. So you had all different types of groups basically trying to steal a lot of valuable minerals from Earth. Why is that? Because Earth is very rare. Gold and silver and platinum are actually quite rare to find throughout the universe. Earth is actually one particular planet that has them in a plentiful supply. Even with a lot of Earth-like planets that exist out there, they don't have that particular type of resource amount like what the Earth itself does. So Earth has always been seen as this big treasure chest to a lot of races. So minerals are very important because they can help to restore planets. And if planets are basically damaged, if they have all kinds of internal climate issues, if their atmosphere is thinning, you can actually start to utilize a type of alchemy with these forms of minerals that can help to restore that. So this is exactly why Earth has basically been quote unquote robbed for a very long time. So that's what happens when you get kind of the brute force type of entities in here. They don't really care about your political affairs or ecological aspects. They're after one thing. Fortunately, a lot of the intraterrestrials and extraterrestrials are not like that. They do want to see humanity prevail, but they want to make sure the Earth is in good shape first.
Now, you mentioned that the whistleblowers that we are witnessing coming forward now, and people are paying attention to them, and the US Congress is paying attention to them, that they're going to be replaced over the next few years by inner earthers, that inner earthers are going to come forward.
Mhm.
So, how's that going to look? I mean, are the inner earthers going to come forward and say, like working with people like yourself, saying, hey, Brad speaks for us, and you go before Congress, or is it that they themselves will actually reveal themselves, and we see them appearing at congressional hearings and sharing what they know about our history and what's coming?
You see, they won't operate like that. They will not operate in regards to a public forum, okay? Because that is too much about fame and that is too much about publicity. No, this is behind closed doors. Now, when we're actually looking at, let's say, for example, extraterrestrials that may want to do this, the majority that would do this would primarily be walk-ins, okay? So walk-ins would basically be, for those of you who are watching this right now and you're not too sure what I'm talking about a walk-in, what a walk-in is that a soul of a previous host leaves the body. A new soul comes into the body, and they start to appropriate themselves over time to get used to the body. It's kind of like the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu Reeves, is that basically he inhabited a new body, and he even said this body is going to take some getting used to, right? So he basically represents an association that basically utilizes a type of walk-in host. that would share this information. But this is not meant to go in Congress. Even if I'm asking Athena about that, she said that's all for entertainment purposes. Really, when you're looking at public conventions and public congress and stuff like that, she's saying that's not high enough. That's not high enough in your governments. That's not high enough for your jurisdictions. She said a lot of those things are for show. They are to let things know about things that have already happened, but not things that's actually happening. The things that are actually going to be happening are never going to be televised. It is never going to be on a camera. It is never going to be in front of an audience, right? It is very much going to be very, very tightly sealed. So the true messengers are just that, because if it was something that would be a public convention and they're talking about me, and so Brad talked about this, then that gives me unnecessary attention, and I don't want that either. But that's not what they're doing. No, it's not about the idea of them going to Congress or testifying by Congress, because they don't follow your rules. They don't follow your jurisdiction. Why would they be part of any particular type of hearing when they are not part of human civilization? No, this is behind closed doors with people that basically have the stroke to say that through the stroke of a pen, they can order things to happen. Well, those are the people that they're going to be talking to, but behind closed doors. It's going to be very discreet and nonchalant. It's not going to be boisterous and loud and in a state of a public affair.
So, are the people that the inner earthers will be speaking to behind the scenes? I mean, are we talking about world leaders that, like the present crop of world leaders? Are we talking about something like Donald Trump's Board of Peace? You know, a select group of world leaders that are promoting world peace. Was it going to be something like the UN Security Council? Is that the level of people that are going to be having these behind the scenes discussions with the inner earthers to kind of like resolve what's coming, what's to be released?
Well, now I know what you mean by talking about the Board of Peace. So, yes, I mean anybody that has the power to, through the stroke of a pen, create a great amount of influence to bring about big change are going to be the people that are talked about. So you could talk about presidents, you could talk about prime ministers, you can talk about world leaders, you could talk about people in UN committees and so forth. But there's even higher up people than them, right? Everybody that you see on television has a certain role, and that's kind of what we would call middle management. There's an upper management, right? So you could look at something like royal figures. You could look at something like bankers, right? You could look at all of these other people that basically would represent the high priests of the planet that are actually going to be talked to a lot more. Okay, so Trump and all of them, even though they have a certain amount of stroke, they're middle management, right? The whole idea of upper management goes far beyond presidencies and prime ministers. It's not to say that they won't be talked to; they certainly will, but there's a lot more of a higher there's a higher threshold beyond them, and there's people involved there that have never appeared on television. Those are the people that are going to be talked to primarily.
Okay, well, I'm sure there's a lot of people that will say, well, those at the very top of the hierarchy in decision making and planetary influence are evil, corrupt, or have been evil and corrupt. Why would we listen to them now? Why would the inner earthers work with them as opposed to the common humanity?
Oh, they're not working with them, they're delivering them a message. They're basically saying either change your ways or you're going to lose everything pertaining to power. Right? Like I said, they are not here to say that I'm going to partner up with you and be buddy buddy. We are here to deliver a message, and we're letting you know. And if you ask the right questions, we'll tell you exactly what's going to happen, because we're telling you that everything relating to your centralized platforms is going to fall, and that people are going to be uncontrollable. You are not going to be able to control the populations anymore. Everything of how things are right now pertaining to events, pertaining to energies, pertaining to everything in the middle is changing so rapidly that their words and their actions are not going to do anything. So here's the opportunity that if you want to listen to us, we can tell you what to do that can actually help you to come more towards where we are. But we're not here to basically give you technology and all that. We're telling you already have that technology, and it's just time to unleash it. It's time to let it out, right? There's all of that, all this technology that is just mind blowing and amazing. That even the technology that we think of today is like Neanderthal play toys compared to some of the things that have been locked up in these vaults. And basically saying that we could basically see that the Vatican itself would be opened up exponentially because a lot of those technologies are there. We could see that a lot of installations, the DUMS, the deep underground military bases, have a lot of that particular type of technology. A lot of that healing technology, medical technology is there. That can be pulled out and brought to the surface. So again, nothing needs to be given to humanity. They already have it. It's a matter of being able to release this right now. So like, basically, it's saying that if you don't release this, if this doesn't come together, then you could basically kiss your whole empire goodbye. You either work together with decentralization because that's where we're going, or you stay and you fall with centralization. It's basically in that way of them saying that you really don't have a choice on the matter. You can either change your ways and prosper in a new way because the world's wealth is going to be shared with the people. It's not going to be in your clutches anymore. You are going to lose everything pertaining to that power. So we can teach you how to acclimatize to that and evolve with it, or you're going to lose everything and you will perish with the system. So that's your choice, right? And that's really where they're going through that messenger. And then you can't threaten these beings because one minute they're here, the next minute they're gone. And like I said, they basically just have walk-in hosts. A lot of them. Some of them do have their own bodies, but most of the time it's through walk-in hosts. It's basically just human bodies that they are using, and then they state their message, and then they're gone. You cannot find them, right? And it's almost like the idea is that they can really be anyone, right? They can be any particular type of volunteer. When there's a volunteer that's giving up their body, there's going to be an opportunity for a soul to come in to utilize that body. And so, like, because it can be a little bit complicated, but that's how it is. And even if they are utilizing their own host body, where they may look quite human, they'll be there 1 minute, and then you won't know how to reach them after that. You see, these are more of the true whistleblowers. They are not here to write books. They are not here to do conventions. They are not here to try and have a comfortable life on the planet. They are here to deliver a message. And they're basically telling a lot of the higher ups beyond Trump and beyond all of them that, your world of centralization is failing. It's going to fall apart. If you want to survive, then consider listening to us. And this is what you would do. Consider handing over this technology. Consider giving the world's wealth to the people. If you don't, this is going to happen with or without you. So either you do it with us and you can still prosper, or you can do it without us and fall with the system as it falls. Centralized systems are going to fall whether you want them to or not. Everything pertaining to this planet relating to centralized programs are going to fall whether you want them to or not. Just where it's going. The energy cannot sustain that centralization anymore. Everything is going to be truly decentralized. Everything is really going to be like a living internet. You can't stop it.
So, with people who have this walk-in experience where all of a sudden an inner earther is working through them to deliver this message to these mysterious global elites, and they deliver that message, and then the inner earther leaves, does the consciousness of the body kind of remember what happened? I mean, can they? Okay, so as far as they're concerned, they don't remember anything, and the global elite, they just kind of like deal with the message that's been delivered to them.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I said, this is how it's meant to happen. It's not meant to say, "Oh my God, who was that guy? Let's target them," right? Because it's not going to happen. With the walk-in agenda that I've been talking about, because I have talked about this for the last couple of months, is that there's a walk-in agenda that's going to happen that's going to offer so much protection around a figure, so to speak, that is meant to deliver these messages that they can't be touched. You can't do anything to them. Even if you tried to assassinate them, your assassinations will fail, right? So basically, they are working with a lot more higher forces, you could say. The higher forces that they work with is basically almost putting them in a type of cocoon where they're going to be highly protected. And like I said, it doesn't even really matter because you don't need that protection because, like I said, they pass on their message and then they leave. You're not able to find them. So this is really what's happening. Is it's like a walk-in agenda. It is a messenger agenda. It is the true whistleblower agenda that is both intraterrestrial and extraterrestrial of a campaign altogether. So you basically are just getting the message and saying, okay, fine, I surrender. I'm going to do this. What do we do? And now they give you instructions and now they will help you. But if you don't surrender and thinking that you can fight this, then I said you're going to lose absolutely everything in front of you before your eyes. This is a chance to redeem yourself. And if you don't redeem, then you fall with your system. Simple as that. And that's something that a choice that they have to make.
I see. So, tell us about the meetings that are happening in Antarctica between the inner earthers and the extraterrestrials.
Yeah, she didn't talk too much about that. She just basically said that there is kind of like a waypoint that's taking place, and a lot of the installations within Antarctica are activating again. And they've been dormant for many thousands of years, quite a long time. And even though there's a lot of scientists down there as well, too, they found a lot of these, you could say, installations and ancient structures, but they were at the time deactivated. A lot of them are now firing up again. So Antarctica is now getting a very large boost. It's now kind of reactivating. But from what I'm being told from Athena is that a lot of the inner Earth civilized, some inner Earth representatives are going to Antarctica to actually rendezvous with some of the extraterrestrial representatives. She basically has said something very profound. She says that the sky is filled with the ancestors, right? So every your skies are filled with them, right? Just like basically not one spot on the planet that does not have the presence of the ancestors on it. So the ancestors are what we would refer to as the true ancient Anunnaki, right? Or the ancient true Elohim. That again isn't really proper terms for them, but that's what we've used. So basically, you could say it's the ancient ancestors of our past that have already come back, and they're basically here to liberate the planet.
Okay, so these ancient ancestors, I mean, they're the ancestors not only of surface humanity, but also of the inner earthers. That the inner earthers go back millions of years. At some point, they were associated with, I guess, surface humanity, maybe like Lemuria or Hyperborea or whatever. But that these ancient ancestors who are returning, the original, well, whether you call them the original Anunnaki or whatever, that they are also the progenitors of the inner earthers as well as surface humanity. Is that right?
No, no, that's incorrect. It is basically them being the ancient ancestors of humankind, not for the inner earthers. The inner earthers are, we don't really know their origins. We don't know them in that sense. They have worked with, you could say, the ancestors, but they are not progeny of the ancestors. We are progeny of the ancestors, but the inner earthers are not. They have a very, very different agenda. They haven't really divulged to me about where their origins are, where they came from, right? I just don't know if it's time for us to hear that yet. So right now, though, when we're looking at the ancestors, they're talking about our ancestors, right? This is why she says your ancestors fill the skies right now, right? So it's our ancestors. It's the ones that basically have brought humanity as a living consciousness in embodiment form in this way to this planet. Those are the ancestors she speaks of.
Now, with the inner earthers, in terms of their origins being kind of like different to us on surface humanity, I always thought that the inner earthers, those surface civilizations from antiquity that imploded, or some of them escaped into the inner earth and formed civilizations there. Others kind of like left, and so is that correct? That the inner earthers are the remnants of ancient civilizations going all the way back in antiquity, or do they have a different origin?
Well, Athena would refer to those as runaways. Okay, so those would not be the true inner earthers. The true inner earthers are one who have actually taken sanctum within the earth for millions of years. Those are the true ones. Those are the true inhabitants of the earth. You see, a lot of the inner earth civilizations are indigenous to this planet, right? We are not. We're not indigenous. We were brought here, right? So basically, you could say the earth has adopted humanity and made her children, right? Because basically of how our bodies are composed, it is composed of the earth, but basically humanity's very spirit has come upon this planet, and the way that we have been brought into being has been in that sense as kind of like a foster child in that way. We in that nature as human beings are travelers. We're star travelers, right? We have been on many planets, we have been on many worlds, we have been a part of many different galaxies, right? And there's just some of us that basically have lost our homes based upon wars, right? So, Alex Collier talks about the idea that all human life originated from Lyra. That would be correct, right? But in this galaxy, right, we're also looking at many other galaxies that different forms of histories at the same time. So basically, when we're looking at ourselves on this planet, we're here in that sense on borrowed time. We're here on borrowed time because eventually, in time, humanity, in the majority sense, is going to be leaving the Earth, and they're going to occupy other Earths altogether, simply because that's our nature. We're kind of like caterpillars cocooning ourselves to become butterflies to move on, right? That's why, in that sense, we wanted to explore the entire world. Now, the world is localized to ourselves, and then we're going to start exploring the moon, and then the moon will be localized to ourselves, and then the entire star system, and that'll be localized to ourselves. That particular trait is indicating a galactic quality of ourselves, right? Any other particular type of indigenous being would form an equilibrium with their environment with no desire to do that. It's very different with humanity because humankind wants to do that. So, with that in our own makeup, within our own blood, to want to do that, that's indicating that you're looking at soul travelers. You're looking at beings that want to kind of come and go. That's just our nature as a species and through our personalities. So, looking at the ancient inner earth beings, the intraterrestrials, they are very different. Again, the Delphi have lived where they've lived for millions of years, and they've never complained about it. They had no desire to go and expand their numbers. They had no idea to go and seize new territory. They have no desire for that whatsoever. And a lot of the inner Earth civilizations are the same way. They form a habitat with their surrounding environment. They have no desire to go out and get some more land and I got to seize this and I want this and I want that. They can't even imagine that we do that. They even say, why does humankind do that? Why do they do that? Because they're travelers. They're travelers. They want to explore more things. They want to evolve. They want to see things a lot more. And a lot of those intraterrestrials do not have that drive. A lot of extraterrestrials do not have that drive. Very few do. So humanity is very unique in that way about how we want to continue to expand. We want to continue to evolve ourselves. And that's basically why we're being seen quite by many as a godly race. Because the idea of wanting to expand and move into new territory and learn new things is not really popular compared to a lot of other civilizations that exist. In fact, the majority of civilizations out there beyond the Earth, extraterrestrial speaking, and a lot of the intraterrestrial beings wouldn't even consider doing that. They form an equilibrium with their environment. Humankind does not.
Fascinating. So with Delphi, I mean, so what you've described is that, over the millions of years, I mean, their society really hasn't changed, or from our perspective, we wouldn't look at it as like having evolved in any kind of particular way. So yeah, maybe you want to describe, how it would appear to us. I mean, if we were to go to a Delphi and just be a tourist for a day or a week or whatever,
Yeah.
how would we kind of come away from that and describe it? And I think why don't you just explain?
Well, for someone who's been to their inner sanctum, right, very briefly, it's like looking at ancient Greece. Imagine ancient Greece about 10 to 15,000 years ago. But you have nature everywhere. You have like these big, big, beautiful stone pillars, right? The typical stone pillars. You have these archways. You have just this beautiful architecture everywhere. But there's also advanced technology at the same time, and it's very holographic. They work with a lot of holography in regards to getting what they need. Right now, they are builders as well too. They do build, they do farm as well, but they're not just quote unquote primitives that live around. They are very much aware of technology, but they would never use our kind of digital technology. That's not what they use. A lot of them are much more holographic in that way. So when I've talked to Athena about that, she says a lot of it is holographic technology, but it's holographic technology because of the density that they reside in, right? If you're actually going deeper inside the earth, it's a very different density, and it's actually lighter, not heavier. So the lighterness of you could say the inner earth is almost like what we refer to as a fourth density realm. It's very much more prone to consciousness because their holographic technology comes through thought, right? But they live in a very splendid. I wasn't able to see too much because they're very reserved about what I could see. But I remember just being able to see just this kind of like I can't remember how I can describe it. It's kind of like how you'd have in ancient Greece. You have like a dome here, and you have pillars coming down, and you have like kind of like a little seated area. I would see that, and then I would see just all this farmland. It was like being in Sweden in the same way. You would just see this farmland stretching out as far as the eye could see, and you would not be able to tell the difference about living here on the surface and living within the Delphi. It's as outside as it feels here, right? So there's that beautiful sense of nature. from what I could remember, just everything felt pure. Everything felt fresh. There's no contamination in their air. There's no contamination in their water. It is just it's pristinely clean, right? So that is really how they live, and so this is why they say they have everything that they need. Why would they need to go anywhere else? That's their mentality. But they are very spiritual, right? They actually are much more like moon worshippers than anything else. They worship the cycles of the moon. They worship the moon as a representative of their culture in that sense. And they said they don't really follow the Greek gods as we do or anything of that nature. She says that's for humanity. She says our ways are very, very different. One of the gods that they would worship would actually be relating to Mu or Mu of the ancient continent Mu, and of course of the moon. So they have their own particular forms of, you could say, I wouldn't say religious, but basically spiritual rituals that are very different from ours.
Now, can you explain a little bit about, well, first of all, their sun? I mean, we're talking about the inner sun, or are we talking about an external sun? You mentioned the moon as well. So if
Mhm.
they're an inner Earth civilization, would they actually see the moon if
Yeah.
it's kind of like out above the surface of the planet?
Yeah, I mean, basically, their ability to see goes far beyond physical perception, right? So what they are able to see comes from their consciousness, right? They're very aware of what's beyond the earth. They're very much aware of a lot of the civilizations. They are much more aware about what's going on our planet than we are, way more. Okay, and a lot of it just doesn't come from within their realm. They're able to stretch beyond their realm, and whenever there's something that's kind of calling their name or calling their attention, they are able to go to it. They're very highly telepathically advanced, right? That's exactly how I'm able to talk to Athena. I'm not seeing her physical body. I'm seeing an astral receptacle of her, right? So when I'm going into the empathic interfacing, she's there already, right? So it's kind of like meeting in an astral plane. And I'm seeing her astral body. I've never met these people in person, right? I've basically met their astral projections of it, because I haven't been physically invited to that place yet. I've been astrally invited, you could say, and you basically go there in dream time, and it's very, very vivid. And one of the experiences I had when I was first doing it back in 2017 is I was actually encountering some particular type of being on the way to the Delphi. That was, I best the best thing I could say is almost like a witch, and basically stopped me and just almost tried to possess me at the same time. And that was back in 2017. And that's why they were so nervous. She says, there's just some beings in the inner earth that really don't like you still, right? And they don't like humankind. Now, again, that's not in the majority, but there are some beings in that sense in the inner earth kind of wish we were dead, right? They lost a lot of their land because a lot of them were ex-surface dwellers, but it goes back a very long time ago. And these are kind of like what we'd call like the runaways, right? And they lost a lot of their land. Sasquatches, for example, certain Sasquatch races are very much biased towards humankind. There's a lot that love us, and there's some that don't. It's kind of like offshoot races or offshoot groups. So, and again, I had that kind of encounter with like a witch-like entity, and just kind of like her eyes were bulging high, and that's usually the sign that they're trying to like take you over and try to possess you. Fortunately, I woke up real quick before anything like that happened, and I did a lot of cleaning of myself afterwards. But that goes back about a good 9 years. But I was able to finally get to the Delphi, kind of through just asking them to escort me there, and that's when I had visions of the Delphi as well too. And like I said, it's absolutely pristine. If we think our Earth is beautiful, if you went there, I mean, the air itself, and you can actually smell the air, like feel the air when you're there as well too. It's the most pure, fresh, pristine bit of air you've ever breathed, right? And just everything about them is pure and clean. It's wonderful.
So, can you tell us about how the inner Earthers, or at least the ones that you're in contact with, have been saying that there's going to be more meetings between surface humanity, and they're talking about kind of like ordinary civilians and inner Earth representatives, and that's part of this kind of like growing inner Earth human alliance?
Yeah, she says that's already happening right now. So there's already talks that are taking place. There's already conversations behind closed doors. And she says that over the next couple of years, it's going to be a very, very different world. It's not going to be the struggle that we're going through right now. The struggle is happening because everything's falling apart. After everything falls apart, all that's left is to rebuild. And so to rebuild is going to be something that is going to have a decentralized aspect to it, because the people are really going to help to rebuild everything. And the feeling is that a lot of the younger generations are going to be the builders of the new world. It's not going to be the old folks, right? It is going to be the younger generation. They are going to be coming in. They are going to be bringing these new ideas, these new innovations, and basically what I could get from the consensus is that this is where we want humanity to go. Because what the new generations are going to do is they're going to get rid of fossil fuels. They're going to get rid of everything that represents technologies that harm the earth. That's what's got to go. The whole idea of food that represents GMOs, right? All of that's got to go. That's going to be burned to bits. The pharmaceutical industry has to go, right? And so we're basically seeing the PH pharmaceutical turned into the F pharmaceutical, the pharmaceutical, right? So we're going to see a lot more people planting more crops on the planet, utilizing land a lot more wisely and not using it so much for busy industry. So a lot of stuff is going to be torn down. There's going to be a lot of stuff torn down. There's going to be a lot of new things built up, but it's the younger generation that is going to be handling that. So with a lot of the things that are happening altogether, right now, these closed door meetings pertaining to the true whistleblowers are happening right now as we speak. This is not something that's going to happen in a couple of years. It's happening right now.
Now, you mentioned certain areas where there are inner Earth populations who are very interested in having meetings with human representatives. You mentioned Arizona, Colorado, Mexico, and India. So,
Mhm.
why those areas?
Well, that's because there's population centers relating to the inner earthers in those areas, right? So basically, central Mexico, if you're looking underground, there's a lot of population there, right? There's a lot of inner earth population there as well, too. A lot of them are humans. They're humans or humanoid in that way. And so they look a lot like, the Mexicans themselves, right? So they could basically go to the surface and you wouldn't be able to tell a difference with them. So there's a lot of different form. Again, if you're looking in the inner earth, you're looking at kind of like a world with nations themselves, right? There's a multitude of different nations within the inner earth, right? It's kind of like how Admiral Byrd would talk about, flying into the South Pole, and he went in and he was able to see this dimensional fold and connecting to this Argatha. And Athena says that is completely accurate. Do not dismiss Admiral Byrd. Everything that he's told you is the complete truth, right? Says that's exactly how it is. He says, but that's a different entry point to where we exist. To get to the inner earth, you would basically need a guide. You just couldn't do it on your own. There's caverns that go very, very deep. But there's also the ability that when a representative meets you, it's almost like you can pass through a wall. And as you pass through the wall, you're in their realm, right? So it's like there's a certain doorway that opens up. There's actually doorways that open that just look like doors, right? You just actually open them up. And then they actually lead down to the earth. I'm not sure if you're teleporting or what the situation is, but you can actually open like these different vault types of doors, and then you're just teleporting, and then you're there, and you're in the inner earth. Like I said, my experiences have just been astral in nature, but for people who actually want to get physically involved with it, you have to have a representative, right? Otherwise, you just would not find the way to the realm.
Now, you mentioned Admiral Byrd, and people are aware of him having had this contact with an inner civilization called the Ariani, that they had craft that were very similar to the kind of like honorable craft of the Nazis. They had some certain, like I think, Iron Cross insignia. So were the Ariani an example of this kind of like a inner Earth Nordic with a Nazi-like philosophy?
Yes, that would be very accurate.
Okay, well that's very interesting because that tells us then that the Nazis who established bases in Antarctica during the Second World War were in fact helped by these
The
Ariani.
extraterrestrials, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, with the you talked about helping surface humanity develop or release these holographic healing technologies that they've been hidden for a long time, but they're here. So, what's going to be the driving force behind the release of these technologies? It's just going to be like the inner earthers helping human representatives kind of like release all this, or will it be because of this other process where you have walk-ins going to the power elite and saying, "Hey, you got to release this, or else."
Yeah, really what it's come down to is a lot of people have seen the light. Okay, and a lot of these people who are the go-to people for a lot of these higher ups are actually switching sides. right? So because they know where everything is and now they're forming new alliances together with each other, we could say it's really a group effort. You could say it's interterrestrial, human, and extraterrestrials that are actually working together. And as they are working together, there's going to be an opening of a lot more, you could say, technologies that are going to come through that are energy devices, new energy devices that are medical technology devices, traveling devices as well too. We are eventually going to discover not just the idea of working together with, medical technologies that's radically advanced, but you're probably going to see like flying saucers flying around the sky. Now, of course, they'll be re-engineered to look more sleek in that way, but it's what I've also seen as well too, is like looking at TR3Bs and actually being able to see TR3Bs just flying around naturally all across the planet. So you're looking at some, you could say, anti-gravitational vehicles that are going to be very much a part of our future, right? You're going to be looking at eventually down the road like portal technology as well too. So actually being able to portal yourself to different areas of the planet as well too. That's a little bit more further down the way, but they have that technology as well too. It's like the Stargates off the Stargates TV series, right? Those are very real things, and they do have technology that works with that in a very similar way. So basically, what it is, it's kind of like there's going to be orders to open up the vaults and let these out. But in order for that to happen, a lot of these other people have to fall away, and they have to fall away because they're going to be obstacles to bringing these out. Once they fall away, then a lot of this new technology is going to come out. So this is why, again, it's kind of like every stone upon the earth is being turned over, right? Not a single stone is going to not be turned over. So again, this is why there's also a lot of whistleblowers coming together, trying to talk to these people that are on, the resisting path, right? They're walking across the grain right now, and they're not going with the current, and that's really what they're targeting. So they're targeting these people in that sense who are going against the grain and saying that, this is going to happen whether you want to or not. So we're just giving you a fair warning here that, you can either prosper with this and you can have amnesty, or you're finished. What do you choose? Right? You have one or the other. There is no middle path here, right? And they think that they can fight it, and they think that they can still maintain their empires. And sorry, but you can't. The time's over. So that's really why they're here. They're trying to basically turn as many people over to the current, right, rather than going against the grain, so that we can actually launch a lot of these technologies sooner. So that's really the whole idea, is that, the earth has had enough. It's almost like she's ready to tap out here. Okay, we need to get the oceans cleaned up. We need to get the air cleaned up. We need to get the water cleaned up. We need to get our lands cleaned up. We cannot keep poisoning people with GMO products. We can't keep having these pharmaceutical companies running the planet, poisoning more people in that way. We can't have our skies polluted. All of this has got to go. And so this is exactly why drastic measures need to be taken, right? Drastic situations are bringing about drastic measures. And this is why they're having to resort to this. They don't want to have to do this. They were hoping that humanity could do it. But there's a lot of whistleblowers who couldn't do it. And it's not to say that they're fault. It's just that, they can be hunted down. They can be found, specifically with today's technology, surveillance technology. It's really easy to find this person. It's really easy to take them out and make it look like an accident. Okay. But you cannot do that with the intraterrestrial whistleblowers. 1 minute they're here, the next minute they're gone. You will not be able to find them. That's exactly why they're the ideal role for the 11th hour, because we're in the 11th hour right now. And everything is meant to basically be turned around and shifted and say, okay, human beings, you need to clean up your act. You need to change. No more of this ridiculous nonsense about you trying to own everything. There are nearly 8 billion people on this planet. You need to share resources. You need to share everything with each other. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to have the power that you have left. Everything around you will crumble. So, and it's basically she's saying that we have the power to do this. We have the power to take everything away from you. We don't want to have to do that. We want to see you prosper. But if you're not going to do that, we're taking everything away from you. So, choice is yours. Option A or option B.
Now, so far we've talked a bit about different human-looking inner earthers, but you've also mentioned the Nagas, the snake people of India. So, what does that mean in terms of future inner Earth contact? Are we going to start meeting more and more of these snake people or reptilians? Is that what our future looks like? That our society is going to have to deal with these beings coming up from the inner earth who just look very, very different and
Well,
frightening.
we have to understand that they've been around for a long time on the surface, right? It's basically been seen that Patanjali, the one who brought a lot of yoga to the world, was basically a Naga, right? And he was seen as a human being. So the Nagas themselves are natural shapeshifters. Okay, they can naturally manipulate their shape into completely human characteristics. So they have already been a part of our history for a very, very long time, but a lot of them dwell within an inner earth, right? So they're very well known throughout India and throughout China, right? So the serpentine people, the Nagas, yes, they're also going to be some of these ambassadors because they want to see the world prosper as well, and they want to see humanity prosper as well. If the Nagas didn't like us, why do you think you would have Patanjali teaching everybody about yoga and him being a Naga, right? So again, there's a lot of misunderstandings. You know, think that these beings are here horrible and that they want to be warring. I said, no, that's not at all how they are, right? If you really look at the ancient nature of the serpent is the knowledge bringer to man. Okay. And that's what they're doing. They're bringing knowledge to us, and they're going to continue to do that. So, again, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of crap that we've heard all over the internet. 90 to 95% of it is garbage. And again, a lot of it is when you actually start connecting with these beings and you start interacting with them yourself, you'll notice the story is a lot more different than what a lot of other people lead on about.
So, is there a kind of like timetable for a lot of these kind of like advanced technologies being released for the kind of hidden rulers changing their ways and allowing all of this to come forward? Are we talking the next couple of years? And what about open contact with the inner earthers and the extraterrestrials? Is that going to happen over the next 5 years, 10 years?
Well, see, these technologies are going to evolve as they come out a lot more. So basically, as we start seeing the genesis of them coming out, probably before the end of the decade or into the start of the early next decade, we're going to start seeing the progenitors of this technology coming out. But it's always going to be more advanced because a lot of what they do is that they don't actually hand the actual technology that we find in the Vatican or that we would find in the deep underground military bases directly to the people. What they do is they go to institutions, they go to agencies, they even go to universities, and they hand them blueprints and saying, this is exactly what we want you to create, right? So basically, it's part of the protocol, so to speak, about being here on the planet with human beings that you can't do that. Okay, you cannot just hand a human being, here's a TR3B, go ahead and use it. Can't do that. Okay. But what you can do is you hand them blueprints. And it's kind of like putting together a puzzle, right? You have to give the impression that humankind is creating this themselves. That's why all scientists will say, I'm sorry, but we don't have any extraterrestrial technology. Of course not, because they've been handed everything in pieces and they got to put it together. From their perspective, this is something that came from a brilliant mind. And they're trying to piece it together. And it's just the deliverers that come together are, they can impose themselves as scientists and basically have like this pure good-heartedness to them altogether. But what you're doing is you're handing them a map and you're saying, this is what we want you to piece together. Here's some ideas that we have. And now you have installations, you have institutions, you have universities, you have agencies that are building these technologies and putting them together and say, oh, here we go, here's a breakthrough. Because that's the clean way to do it. You can't just say, here's a TR3B. Here's a Stargate teleporter. You can't do that, right? You have to be able to hand them the blueprint piece. And I know that's not a lot of what people want to hear, but that's how it works, guys. That's how it works. If it was really in the point saying, yeah, one guy showed up one day and he brought a TR3B hauled behind the back of his truck. No, it doesn't work that way, okay? These are all specific blueprints and they're not always whole. You have to kind of piece them together, and that's deliberate. It's deliberate for that to happen. So yeah, I mean, basically you have to look into manufacturing. Before that, you have to look into the idea of putting the blueprints together. That is going to take years. So, I mean, there's already some of that stuff that's already happening right now. So over the next few years, we will see a lot of this coming together, but it just will take time altogether. Now you ask about disclosure in that way. Well, this is what's so important about the summer of 2026. With the being that I channel Adronis, he was talking about a certain crop circle is going to be erected in England this summer between July and September. I believe, oh, no, sorry, June and August is what he was saying. Between June and August. And he says, you'll know the type of crop circle because it will give a type of geometrical representation of a veil dropping, of worlds coming together, right? And he says, watch for that type of crop circle. He says, once that comes out, we'll let you know when it does happen. But that crop circle is a very important one. That's like opening up a certain neural pathway of the earth, where the interest to connect a lot more to otherworldly beings is going to start becoming the norm for humanity. So it's almost like a new brain cell, a new neural pathway that's opening up, that's going to generate a lot more interest in the next little while for human beings to want to interact a lot more with other civilizations.
I mean, that process of disclosure of advanced technologies from extraterrestrials that you described is exactly what Fuller Corso described that the army began doing in the 1950s and 60s, seeding technology companies with the blueprints of some of these advanced technologies, and that they've been doing that ever since. And yeah, that makes sense. That it would make it look as though it was an organic process where Earth scientists were coming up with all these ideas, but really it's being seeded by intelligence agencies and governments that want this technology to come out. So that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, he's 100% correct in that. So like I said, it just has to happen that way, right? And again, this is where people have their imaginations and they go and so, Brad, why don't they just hand us a flying saucer? Why don't they just hand us a TR-3B? Because the people are going to panic because they don't know where that thing comes from, right? And to them, it's going to be some sort of abomination. It's going to be some horrendous magical device that they can't figure out. And it's kind of like looking at the old days where they come running after you with pitchforks and torches, right? So the whole idea is that the internet's going to blow up like that. You can't do it. You got to do it cleanly. And how do you do it cleanly? You seed it. You talk to technology companies. You talk to industries. You talk to installations. You talk to agencies. You talk to universities, because that's where a lot of these great inventions are coming together with. And you just seed it in there. You make it look so clean and so official. But really behind the scenes, this is all back engineered technology that they did in classified projects. So again, looking at things like TR-3Bs are going to be very, very normal at some particular point, but they're going to look a little bit more different. They're going to have a little bit more of an aerodynamic and more of a sleeker and sexier look to them altogether, because that's our style together with humankind, especially when you have different forms of companies that want to put them together as particular vehicles.
Okay, so there's going to be a lot of reinventing of the wheel as these new versions come forward that have been seeded into companies like SpaceX or Blue Origin or whatever. Okay, so with the actual contact with extraterrestrials, so crop circles are going to be playing a big role, and this one that you were told is coming up this summer is going to really trigger an awakening that it's going to be something quite phenomenal to
Yes.
kind of trigger that.
And again, that's the way it has to happen because it's quiet, right? It's not that every person on earth is going to be looking at what type of crop circles are coming in. Even with the people that I talk to, only a few people are really going to be searching for that, right? And that's the perfect approach, is to start bringing this particular form of seed upon the planet. Crop circles are more than just glyphs that we're seeing in the crops. I've actually had the pleasure of seeing 2 crop circles in person, freshly made. And I can tell you it's like standing in front of a pyramid. It's like being inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. That's how much energy is there, right? So you're basically looking at incredible frequency technology, light technology that is actually bending the crops. And the crops are completely alive. They're in complete shape. Nothing dies in a crop circle. Everything is still alive. The crops are basically bent over, but they're still living, right? And you can't do that with a Doug and Dave going into the field and trying to push everything down with boards and ropes. Okay, that kills the crops. This doesn't. This is basically keeping the crops completely alive. So they're completely intact. They don't wither away. In fact, the entire field now has become fertilized with pure frequency. So it's actually going to bring more longevity. But that actually comes in as an imprint. That's almost like looking at a codex that is meant for the brain of the earth to actually open up a neuron. So this is exactly what's taking place, is we're actually seeing subconscious glyphs that are meant to affect the earth as a subconscious neuron to open up to enable this next level of development for humanity. And that's been happening for a very long time, for as long as crop circles have started.
So you want to just finish off by sharing your final thoughts about where we stand at the moment as a planet, and all of this unfolding.
Yeah, I know a lot of people want to say, "Oh, Brad, when's disclosure coming, right? When are we gonna have first contact?" I said, "That's still a long ways away." And I know people don't like me to say that, but I said, "We got a lot of things to do. We still have to explore a lot of our own solar system, right? So we're gonna be exploring not just what's beyond the Earth, we're gonna look at the moon, we're gonna look at Mars, we're gonna look at all these things. And as we become a lot more starbound, that's when the time will come when it's time to meet the ancestors, right? So they basically will intervene with us at a certain point. It's not so much that we are waiting for them, they're waiting for us. And they're waiting for us to go to a certain point. It's kind of like the Star Trek future that once they invent warp drive, now they come in and they have a civilization come to talk. Oops.
Oops.
Sorry, I got cut off here for a second. Okay. But that's basically the same thing is that, once you invent warp drive, then, it's going to get somebody's attention and then they're going to be coming forward. So that's really what it is that there's going to be certain forms of advanced development that we reach. There's a certain threshold that we cross. And once we cross that threshold, they say, okay, humans are ready, we'll come. And that's how it will happen. So there you go.
Great. So, you want to share anything about what you've got coming up? People, webinars, seminars, and your website.
Yeah, right now, people can do a one-to-one private session with me. I'm actually going to be retiring the one-to-one sessions here after the end of March. So I'm going to be taking bookings up until March 31st. After that, things are just going to be changing with me because I am building some other things with businesses and so forth. But if you are interested in doing a one-to-one private session with me, you can see the website here. It's wisdomtransmissions.com. And through that, there's 30-minute, 45-minute, and 60-minute private sessions that you can do. I also have a Patreon called patreon.com/Adronis. That's where we do a weekly classroom there. And of course, I also do half-hour sessions through the Patreon. And also I have my YouTube channel. You can find my YouTube channel directly on wisdomtransmissions.com, as I have a weekly webcast every Wednesday starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So again, I have a lot of people that come on, they ask questions. So again, be part of the weekly webcast, which is called the Wisdom Nexus. And of course, you can check out wisdomtransmissions.com for the sessions, and of course, patreon.com/Adronis.
Well, thank you, Brad, for sharing all that incredible information. I really do appreciate having all of that clarity about what the inner earthers are doing. I think that's what we really need to pay attention to. So many people are interested in extraterrestrials, and that's fine, that's great. I am as well. But we can't forget about the inner Earth civilizations, and you've helped educate us about that. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on again. Appreciate it.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.